Hi, my name is Michael O'Reilly. I'm a painter. Thanks for joining us today. I'm also a scenic artist, so we're here in the Royal Opera House workshop where I work. And today we're going to be doing a workshop exploring clouds. Now, in the live version of this, we went through a couple of different techniques. For today, I'm just going to be focusing on one where you kind of have this sort of more gritty texture. But just for your reference, if you're interested in these other ones, all I did for this one, so for example, was put some water on the surface. Watercolour paper works really well for this. And then dabbed some watered down paint onto that surface and kind of let it do its thing and just let the kind of shapes unfold as you're painting, and you can dab back with tissue. And then for this one, all I did was, to create the shapes, is get a little bit of torn up cardboard from like a cereal packet or something, and for this one I used charcoal, but you could also use some blue chalk as well. And all I did was put it on the surface, rubbed the chalk or charcoal across, and then rubbed it back with my finger. And when you take the cardboard off, you've got a lovely little shape underneath. All I did for that was just build it up bit by bit. But like I say, we're going to be looking at this one today. But before we get started on that, I just want to show you a couple of things, a couple of images. In this source pack, which you can download, there are some really simplified cloud shapes. Just, you know, if you don't really want to go outside and look at clouds, or you're not quite sure where to start, this is a really nice place, just simplifying some shapes. And also I thought it'd be really nice just to throw in a couple of sort of source images as well, so you can see the really different types of textures, different types of sort of shapes that clouds make, from these kind of soft, sort of wafting ones to much harder, kind of streaky ones. And then you get these really sort of mad ones that are kind of, just to show you a couple of other formations. Also just to show you a couple of examples of how other artists have also interpreted clouds here. You can see we've got some really photorealistic ones. Here some much more gestural shapes. And then here, still kind of, you know, interpreting clouds, but in a much more kind of graphic, cartoon-like manner. And just very quickly to show you, these are some images from our workshop, which are painted by some of the scenic artists here. This was for a production of Swan Lake. You can see the kind of, the sort of glowing qualities, the really giant sort of sweeping shapes of clouds that you get here. And also very quickly, just to show you, in film as well, for example, where you have lots of kind of built elements of scenery in front of a very sort of softly painted backdrop that kind of circles around the area where they're filming to kind of, yeah, give you a sort of sense of reality that might just actually be in the studio. So to get started, what we're going to be using materials-wise for this particular workshop, you're going to need some paper, something that you can mix paints on, some water, a couple of brushes, a bit of sponge, you know, just a bit like you use to wash up dishes, just ripped off, and a selection of paints. So I'm just going to make a smaller box within this by just taping this down. I'm not sort of thinking about it too much. I'm just going to make a kind of shape within this. You can use any size you want, but yeah, for the purposes of this workshop, I'm just going to do a slightly smaller one. So now we've got this shape in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the templates that I showed you earlier. I'm just going to take this one just to kind of give me an idea. I'm going to have it next to me, just something to look at for when I'm painting in the clouds. But before we get to that stage, I'm going to choose a couple of colours. Again, you feel free to like use any colours you want. I'm just going to be kind of using some of these colours from this kind of sunset image here. So I'm going to get another kind of blue, a bit of yellow, a little bit of white, and a little bit of red. So I'm just going to take one of these brushes and start mixing up a bit of the blue. And the way I'm going to kind of think about this is almost just in two halves. So the top half I'm going to make the kind of bluer area, and then in this lower half it's going to become more yellow, a little bit more yellowy. And I'm just going to keep this really simple just to show you. So now I've got a bit of paint on my brush, still quite thick. I'm going to be doing this type of motion. Just dabbing it around like that. Almost in a kind of line. So I'm just going to start in the corner. Whatever sort of brush you end up using, you'll find you get different types of marks. You know, this is a slightly bigger brush, so you're getting these kind of really nice, interesting marks. Once I've gone across, I'm just going to come back and fill in a few areas here and there, turning the brush around so it's not always going in the same direction, and then I'm just going to move on. Just work a bit lower. And as I get towards the middle, just kind of lower than the middle, I'm just going to actually let the paint run out on the brush a bit rather than reloading. And you see, you start to get some slightly smaller marks, but it starts to sort of fade out a bit. Now we've got that, I'm going to move on to mixing vibrant yellow. Might mix a little bit of white into that. And again, just add a little bit of water, really. And now I'm just going to work up, same thing really, I'm just going to work up from the bottom, same process, and kind of meet the blue as I go up. And as I go up, I'm actually just going to add a little bit of white to it, just so it gets, you know, that sort of strong yellow becomes a little bit more subtle. And as you see, when it hits the blue, you get a little bit of colour mix in there, so like it'll start to go a little bit green. You can, if you don't want that to happen, you know, just you can either wait for it to dry, or you can just kind of let it meet and leave it. But I'm just going to sort of work into it a little bit, just kind of keeping the brush sort of moving. Now again, at this point, you could add more colour. You could add a darker blue at the top there. You could add, you know, sort of more orangey colour at the bottom, just to sort of, you know, intensify some of that. Just like this, basically. You know, for example, a bit of blue. But for the purposes there, I'm just going to leave it there, just to show you how you can get a really nice effect quite quickly. And then for the next bit of the exercise, I'm going to be looking again a bit more at some of these shapes. And all I'm going to do is mix up a kind of sort of light yellowy orange. I'm just going to split it into two colours. I'm going to do a yellowy orange, and then on top of that, a slightly darker colour. Once I've got a colour that I'm, you know, sort of happy with, I'm going to take a bit of sponge, you know, and you can just rip a bit of sponge off and almost imagine you're using it a little bit like a stamp. So get some of the colour onto your sponge and you're just kind of stamping it along to make some shapes, really. Just kind of coming and going. You can do some bigger ones, some smaller ones. Again, you'll find here, this one is kind of mixing and making different colours with the wet paint already on the surface. You know, and if you wanted to wait for it to dry, you know, you can do that. I'm just doing some of those sort of nice horizontal cloud shapes. Again, not thinking about it too much, just doing a bit here and there and then moving on, really. Once you've got a few that you're sort of happy with, a few sort of shapes on there, you can either use the same bit of sponge or you can get another bit. I'm just going to get another bit here. And I'm going to make a darker colour to go on top, sort of nice sort of dark purpley colour. All I'm going to do is just repeat the same kind of process, really, but leaving some of the kind of outer, so almost like you were filling in inside the shape a little bit. And again, you know, you could do as many colours as you want on this. You could really sort of have a look at a photograph and try and match some of the colours, or use some colours that, you know, you're really drawn to. It's one of those nice things where it's so quick and easy to do. You can just kind of try different colours out. I've shown you a really simple, quick way of doing it. We've literally just used 4 colours, but you've got a lot of kind of nice texture and activity. So the only thing left to do after that is to take your tape off. Just be careful when you take it off that you don't rip any wet paint, or the paper might be a bit damp, depending on what paper you use. And that's kind of all there is to it. It's like I say, you don't really need to have any experience with a paintbrush. It's just a really nice activity to do. All that's left to say is thanks for joining, and here's what we've made.